All right. Is now, no, it's not. It is now 4 o'clock. I would like to call to order the Richland County Office of Small Business Ad Hoc Committee for April 25th, 2023. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Brenham,
Here.
Livingston, Pugh,
Here.
Barron, Mackey,
Here.
Newton.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Ms. Barron did let me know that she would be attending the meeting via Zoom. And I don't see her on. All right. Item number 2, approval of minutes from March the 7th, 2023.
Move to approve. Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, can you call the vote?
Brenham,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
Barron, Mackey,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Item number 3 is the adoption of the agenda. Is there any changes or deletions to the agenda?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
if the committee wants to take any action, item number 4 should be amended to say action/discussion items or discussion/action items.
Okay. Any other amendments?
No, sir.
All right.
Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I was about to make a motion.
Ms. Mackey?
I move to accept the agenda with the amendment to item 4 to change to action/discussion items. Second.
All right, it's been properly moved in second. Any other discussion? Mr. Brenham?
Mr. Wright, we're okay to do this right now in compliance with FOIA?
Yes, I believe so, because the items that we're discussing are on there. It just has discussion instead of having both action and discussion.
Okay.
But
thank
the
you.
items are listed.
All right. It's been proven and properly seconded. Any more discussion? If not, Madam Clerk, can you call for the vote?
Brenham,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right.
I'm sorry.
Barron, yes.
We have Ms. Barron too. Thank you, Ms. Barron.
All right. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Barron. All right. We're moving on to item number 4 is discussion items, a review of the Office of Small Business ordinances. Mr. Wright, you recognize.
Yes. Well, currently, the setup is that the Office of Small Business Administration answers to the procurement director. There was a proposal by a previous administrator that it be under that office or under administrator for a year and then become under economic development, but that was a proposal. There was never an ordinance that says that. So currently, it's the office answers to the procurement director. If you want, what this committee can do is determine whether they want it to stay that way or if they want the Office of Small Business to answer directly to the administrator or some other setup. So that's a decision for the committee to make and present to full council.
Mr. Wright, can you give us some history on the ordinance, please?
Oh, well, there's a number of ordinances where it changed from, I think, where it previously did answer to the administrator. And I can't say why, but for some reason it changed to this current setup where it is to the, under the procurement director. So at this point, and that took place over a number of years where it kind of, I guess, evolved or changed. But at this point, this council can determine how they want the setup to be. There's nothing where you have to continue the current setup. You can, but you don't have to.
Am I correct when I say that these ordinances were established under the penny tax referendum?
Yes, they started initially. That's what I think the office kind of was created due to that, but it doesn't have to remain that way.
Any questions from my colleagues? Ms. Mackey? I'm sorry.
No, I was just moving my mic. I yield to Ms. Mackey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarification, Attorney Wright, so the ordinances that are listed here, 1 through 5, can you just specifically say which one right now is the actual current one that we are operating under?
Well, the latest one is the number 5, the 010-17 HR. And I think what the confusion was is that there was a proposal from the former administrator that it would operate a certain way for 1 year and then go under economic development. But that was not actually in the ordinance. That was a proposal from the administrator. So at this point, this council can change it and determine, what you want. But that was a proposal that was never made law through an ordinance.
Got it. So, but currently, the number 5 is the current ordinance. And
Right.
then just for clarification, so currently, the Office of Small Business does do a lot, I guess, or kind of acts in hand with the Penny program, help bring minority businesses or get them resources related to opportunities with the Penny. And so I guess I want to clarify that that is not the sole kind of role of the office, but that is more so a piece of what the office does. Is that a correct assumption?
Right. I think the establishment was based on the penny, but the council can determine that the office can have a wider umbrella than just the penny. It can deal with areas that have nothing to do with the penny. So I think that's what the initial setup was, but that can be changed.
And then I guess I want to let Ms. Newton have a chance before I go to a different topic.
Thank you. And so first, I apologize because I'm going to ask you part of the same question she asked, because as I was flipping through my iPad, you were answering a question. It's great to go paperless, except when somebody gives you 5 almost identical ordinances, and then it gets tricky. So again, the ordinance that is in effect now states that this is a department that reports to the county administrator. Is that correct? No.
Well, it reports to the procurement, to
Okay,
the director
so-
of procurement
so
currently.
That's fine. Okay, so the current ordinance says that it reports to procurement. Okay, and then Ms. Mackey asked my question about the penny program. So I guess my question is this, and I think it might be for the county administrator. For my information, what are the implications of changing its departmental status from procurement to you? Does it only mean that you get 1 additional direct report? Are there any other legal or other ramifications that we need to understand?
I think specifically the ramifications really deal with the level of responsibilities and duties that you want this department to have, more so than the reporting structure. Because as the administrator, all those flow up to me. So one is just a direct contact if you had a director, versus the other one would be through a director to their division. Really, otherwise, you're talking about the responsibilities of the department and the duties, which is, I think, some of the questions, the main questions, rather than who specifically are they talking to directly on a daily basis.
Thank you. And then, as I really did read every word on all of these ordinances. Like I said, there was a lot of overlap, so it was challenging for me to keep straight. So while I understand that this is a department that was originally created with the penny in mind, as I read the broad functions of the department, to me, it didn't seem in any way limited to the penny. And so I guess my question is, if that is correct, and we wanted the department to continue really the same functions, but just make it clear that it was countywide, do you envision that that requires a broad rewrite of the ordinance or just simple modifications? And at this point, Ms. Brown, that question may be more for Patrick Wright. You were just making eye contact, so I was keeping it, with you.
No, I don't think it would be, I guess, need a vast change in the ordinance. It's just the structure would be, it would be a standalone division that would basically do the same thing. So it would be, still deal with penny projects, but it would deal with other projects as well. So it would just, the only difference would be that there would be an ordinance which would make it a standalone division.
Okay, and then I guess my last question, which I'm going to try my best to ask, is the way that I look at this department is it has really, let's call them two functions, or maybe three. There's one that is a broad outreach, awareness, and education function. And then there are some duties, and they may be the ones that originated with the penny, that seem more like procurement-y functions, or if not procurement type functions, they are data collection functions. I'm just kind of going through my procurement database here. Is that how you see the department, or am I missing some other major function?
So there are some components based on the way the ordinance is written, which is why my mind goes there, that says some functions are procurement related.
Right.
Because that's how it's actually written. So I think there will always be a component, because what you're talking about is connecting entities to procurement-related opportunities. So how do you do business with Richland County? You find that under the procurement process. So that connectivity will always have a certain component of procurement.
Sure.
But I think to the extent that they're holistically separate functions, I think there will always be a small part where there's an interconnectivity, which is, I think, is why maybe they did it that way. Again, I don't want to try to reach, but because there is some connectivity to those, between those organizations, there has to be some kind of partnership in some
Correct.
shape, form, or fashion between those duties, whether it's under it or a partnership relationship.
Okay, and then I guess my last question would be, then considering that, because I'm really quite open on the organizational and reporting structure, I just want to make sure that any I's that need to be dotted are dotted, and T's that need to be crossed are crossed, is one of the questions that I asked previously is, what are the implications if we said, okay, you know what, this is distinct enough that this should report to the administrator. Are there any functions that, as they currently exist, that would be better served moving them out and putting those functions under procurement? Or, in your opinion as the administrator, is having that liaison and that connection sufficient enough to make sure that we're doing what we need to do? And maybe that's not a question for you.
Yeah, I think that really comes down to the level of customer service that employees provide. I think we can get caught up in, how something is termed, or we can get caught up in what are we doing to bring value to the community through these particular responsibilities and duties. So, Ms. Newton, I don't know that there's a service that the entity currently provides that if you remove it from procurement, that it would diminish it. But I do think there needs to be an understanding that it is not separate in the sense that it will never have any ties to procurement, because I don't see how fundamentally that happens. There will have to be a partnership that happens on some level, even if the office reports directly to me as the administrator. So I just want to make sure that I'm not misleading you when I talk about, you know, the separation of what that means in terms of how those agencies will have to interface and interact.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That answers all my questions.
Just wanted to tease out something further, and Ms. Mackey, I think, asked for clarification earlier, but just reviewing the minutes from the last meeting and Ms. Wade's presentation, said the mission of the OSBO is to provide a race and gender-neutral tool to ensure all segments have a reasonable opportunity to participate in contracts. So I'm not sure, at least based on the presentation, I don't see a current role being stated to like advocate for minority participation. Is that correct?
Well, I think the current, and really this is in the 2016 version, which really does kind of separate it, even though they're operating under procurement. But what it says is the office which shall manage and administer the SLBE program and shall undertake other functions and duties as assigned by the county administrator or county council. So I guess its purpose is to deal with the small business procurement requirements, and so I'm not sure if it technically, at least not by ordinance anyway.
Right.
So now there can be functions that are set up by the administrator, or but as far as the ordinance, yeah, that's not in the ordinance.
It does seem like, in effect, that is what's happening, you know, that certainly you're obtaining minority participation, just based on what we also saw from the presentation, that 88 African-American, 2 Hispanic, 1 other, 2 Asian, out of 114 certified SLBEs. Again, reflecting, reviewing the minutes from last time, I seem to get a response from staff that staff preference or recommendation was to have the office answer directly to the administrator. The administrator didn't take a position on that. What are the other possibilities besides procurement? It sounds like potentially economic development. What other possible departments might make sense to be affiliated with OSBO if we were to?
If that's a question for me, Councilmember Branham, I think, you know, really structurally, based off what they would be doing, the other area I think that they were kind of working closely with was the government and community services area. But again, regardless to where the council decides to put them, based off the function that they ultimately provide, they're still going to be connected and partnering with procurement on some shape, form, or fashion. If it's a better support for this council to have the administrator directly oversee that department, and you feel like that's the way I want to go, then it ultimately still is going to be, how do we work well to make sure that those small and local businesses have equitable opportunities to work that the county provides for through our procurement mechanism. So that's still going to happen on some level. When we're going out and recruiting folks, or when we're going out and providing opportunities for small businesses, they're still going to have some connectivity to that department. And the only other department that kind of does something similar in terms of connecting the community from a overall perspective is and I may be saying that out of order, is Government Community Services or Community Government Services, but that would be the only other area that I think is more county-wide driven in talking about accessing and providing access to citizens at large.
Last item for now. And I'm sorry if it feels like we keep looking backwards, but I feel like we're all on the same page as trying to just make sure that we're clear on where we've been so we know where to go. Because this came about in concert with the penny tax, are we running any risk that the ordinance that creates the OSBO is going to be voided when the penny tax collection period ends or the program ends? Are we running a risk of?
No, because I guess the latest ordinance already has it in there for the Office of Small Business Opportunities. So I think what this committee and council has to determine is what exactly do they want the setup to be and what do they want them to do specifically. But no, I don't think it'll have any effect whatsoever, either on the penny or the penny on it.
Okay, thank you.
Now I'd like to welcome our colleague, Mr. Livingston, for joining us. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure, sir.
All right, Ms.
Thank you. So I guess I wanted to really just talk a little bit about what I would like to see the office do and move into, and maybe that can kind of help, I guess, Attorney Wright with guiding us on appropriate ordinance language and how to move forward. But we went through as a body through a strategic planning process last year, and a lot of the things I think that we wanted to see in the strategic planning process didn't necessarily fit in with economic development and what that department kind of currently does. Oftentimes with economic development, they're really looking at more larger industry. They work to bring that to our county. And I think there's a gap between what it is that we as a council talked about we wanted to see kind of happen versus what economic development is doing. And so I would like to see the OSBO office really operate more in a standalone type setup to where it feels as if to the community that there is this resource that the county has, that we are invested in, that we are putting this office out there to really help small businesses grow in all aspects, right? Wherever that is. There's a lot of talk. I remember in the strategic plan where we wanted to just even, there was talk about looking at retail and really partnering with community development and understanding what kind of businesses communities needed and how we develop a strategy to help get there. And a lot of that wasn't really what economic development was doing, but it was something that the council really wanted to figure out how to do. And I feel like if we could have the Office of Small Business really start looking at being that standalone piece where we're working strategically in each district to kind of help and promote and bring about those small businesses that folks are wanting to see as our community grows, that would be kind of a useful growth for that department. So, Mr. Chair, I've said a lot, but hopefully that gave some type of direction, ultimately wanting them to be standalone, but also wanting it to do more than what it's doing now as well.
All right, thank you, ma'am. So, Mr. Wright, are we certain that we're operating on under number 5 currently?
Right. Well, it is. We are operating number 5, but number 4 is really specific to, I guess, the small business office, and I think that's kind of, it's general. So what I guess this committee needs to do is determine specifically what they want that office to do, what the focus is. I think right now, by the ordinances, is to do the SLBE program. That's basically, by ordinance, is what their purpose is. If you want to expand that or do anything else, then you can put that, add that to the ordinance. And I think currently there is I guess, a disparity study that's in the works. And I know that really if you want to do specifically with like minorities and women, you have to do the disparity study to get that, to really add that portion. But you can, in your ordinance, have what you want the focus to be, whether it's just small businesses, whether it's just local businesses, or it's small local minority, whatever. So you can kind of do it how you feel that council wants it to be done.
All right. Yes, sir, Mr. Brennan.
I just would remind everyone again that on page 6 of the packet, we've got that presentation from Ms. Wade. And right out the gate, she's got the current mission, the current goals, and the current services provided. So maybe that's a starting point for the conversation, and we can decide whether we want to subtract or add to it. And I also, I'm sorry, I'm still learning people, but I don't know if Ms. Wade is here. Okay, hi. I'd be happy to hear from Ms. Wade again if she wanted to make some suggestions or recommendations to us for anything to add to the functions.
Ms. Wade, you recognize.
Good afternoon, Erica Wade, the manager for the Office of Small Business Opportunity. So just to kind of go back, when we look at the different ordinances that we talked about in the last meeting, so under ordinance, we were under 05816 HR. That was the last passed ordinance. But under the number 5, I think we're talking about, we're not listed where, can you pull it back up to 5? Yes, 01017. I think that's where the administrator at the time, he kind of did a reorg of the whole county. But in that particular ordinance, OSBO was not listed anywhere in that ordinance. But at the time, administration, they did I think the former administrator did a letter, and it's listed in our packet, where they talked about the reorg, and we were put under government and community services because of the direction that the office was headed in at that moment, and that's where we are currently. No, we're under procurement right now, and that was just done this year, last year? Last year, yeah. Yeah, but we are operating under we should be operating under number 4, ordinance-wise, based on our research.
Mr. Chair? Yes, sir. So, Ms. Wade, would it be your preference, or would you like to be together with Government and Community Services?
Well, if I had a preference, I would go with Ms. Mackey as being a standalone because of some of the services that we provide, and also to be able to function in certain capacities in order to really connect on a director's level to get things passed. Being a standalone really helps. But since we're going through the disparity study and we want to operate under ordinance based on our research, and correct me if I'm wrong, but under ordinance, we should be under 05816 HR. That was the last ordinance that was passed. But if I had to have a preference, I would prefer to be a standalone.
Mr. Chair, one more thing.
Yes, sir.
So, you gave that presentation, and we have it on page 6 of our packet today with the goals and the services provided. Is there anything that you would specifically like to see added to those lists for the future?
I think we pretty much listed everything that we would like to have added. And of course, we have the disparity study that's going on that would put some teeth into the program.
Okay, thank you.
So we have some questions about the history of how we got to where we are. I can answer those, but you know.
Mr. Chair? Yes, sir. Yeah, and I think what the issue, it is that there's a creation of the office, but it was never actually changed in the code. So that's what needs to be changed in the code, but while we're doing it, you can determine what you specifically you want the office to do if you want it to be anything different than it currently is doing.
The administrator did make some changes, but it never truly.
Right, it was a proposal, but it never actually became a law.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess hearing from everyone, I would like this, I guess I'm going to talk aloud to say if this is a good step forward or doable. But I would like to begin drafting a new ordinance that puts this office as a standalone, but then also includes additional language that kind of addresses the things that we discussed in the strategic plan. So I understand we're doing the disparity study, but I do think there's some other pieces that I would like to see the office do in conjunction, standalone, but still work in conjunction with procurement, work in conjunction with the community development, government services office, working in extension with economic development as well. So, and still doing what they did with the transportation penny. So I feel like if we could start a new ordinance, is it possible that you could start language based off of what we provide to you we'd like to see, and then you're able to draft something? Is that the appropriate way to maybe get a new draft before us?
Yeah, if you can give the specifics as to what you want the office to do and what you want in the ordinance, yeah, an ordinance can be drafted to do that.
Mr. Wright, going forward, what would be our correct steps? Will we need to take action this evening on where we would like to see our office report to, and then we go and create the ordinance, or do we need to create the ordinance first and then take action?
Yeah, I think at this point, what I guess this body, the committee, needs to do is determine specifically what they want the office to do, so that we know what needs to be in the ordinance. Because I think before it's sent to full council, we need to know what we're sending to full council. So I think at this point, the committee needs to determine specifically what they want in the ordinance, or what they want the office to be over or do.
Mr. Chair.
Recognize, ma'am.
Thank you. So I'd like to make a motion to work with the county attorney to develop a new ordinance for the Office of Small Business Opportunity to be a standalone agency, provided with details from this body.
Second that.
All right, it's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I just think that to make it fair to Mr. Wright and his team, that we might want to set an internal deadline as to when we would like to send him feedback, and then potentially ask the clerk if she wants to extend that invitation to full council. Even if they're not on the committee, they may have thoughts that they want to share that we bring before the body.
I totally agree. Ms. Backey, do you want to amend your ordinance to add a deadline to it?
Yes, do the two of y'all have a deadline in mind?
Well, and I don't know that it needs to be amended I don't know that the motion needs to be amended. I just think that we need to agree. And if you would like feedback from me, it should not be sooner than 2 weeks. But you don't have to have feedback from me. I'm just looking at my schedule.
Yes, Mr. Brennan, you
Sure.
recognize?
I think this is a great first step. Do we want to go ahead and also request that the attorney begin drafting some of the information related to the functions of the office? Or do we just want to start with an initial draft that only covers where it fits within the organization chart?
Mr. Chair?
Sir, Mr. Wright, you recognize?
I'm not really drafting anything until I get information from y'all. So what I need is y'all to give me information before we can draft anything. So I need to know what you want before I can start drafting something. So that's what it is that I guess the committee has to decide what do you want the office to focus on and send those recommendations, and it can be put in the form of an ordinance based on what you want, but I need to know what you want first.
So with that being said, let's set a date for May 9th, which is exactly 2 weeks from today, to get information to Mr. Wright in order for him to start drafting an ordinance.
Actually, sorry,
Yes, ma'am.
since I know that I'll be traveling halfway across the country, sorry, would it be possible to just make it that Monday in the spirit of generosity, which would be the 15th? Thank you.
Monday, May the 8th is the deadline to get your
Dude.
information.
She said the 15th,
Say that again?
the May 15th,
You said May
Sorry.
15th.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay.
the
When
following
you,
Monday.
you said that Monday. I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
went
yeah.
back one down.
Yeah,
Okay.
me too. And if I may, one thing to Mr. Branham's point, just while we're here as a body, my impression is that in all of the meetings that we've had, there's nothing that I've heard that ever gave me the impression that there was a council member that was troubled with the current functioning of the office. There may be things that people want to add and tweak, but broadly speaking, as we look at the mission, the vision, the goals, and the responsibilities that are outlined in our adjacent ordinances, we seem to be good with that. And so I'm saying that that's my impression, but I'm asking for confirmation of a body, because if nothing else, that allows us to have a common starting point, that we're not necessarily reinventing the wheel for all the things that are currently part of their charter. We're just asking, are there additions or tweaks? So is that a fair representation of the body?
Mr. Chair,
Brenham?
it just seemed like Mr. Wright was looking for us to give some concrete direction as to the functions of the office. I would be happy if we just recommended starting, as a starting point, the goals, the services provided, and the mission set forth in Ms. Wade's presentation. But again, I'd love to hear more discussion on that. I know we've
Absolutely.
got a motion on the table.
We do have a motion on the table, and I think originally Ms. Newton gave the suggestion of us sending out to our fellow council members that's not a part of the committee to get some feedback from them as well. So, Mr. Livingston?
Kind of follow up on what Mr. Brown was saying. It's important to me that we don't just solely rely on council members for feedback, but also what it look like. I think there are a lot of experts that we need to what we have and what their concerns are, what they think might work based on what they've been doing. So I don't want to.
Gotcha. Ms. Mackey, do you mind restating your motion, ma'am?
Sure. My motion was to,
Sorry.
I know, hold on, because I didn't say direct. My motion was to work with the county attorney to develop a new ordinance for the Office of Small Business Opportunity that creates the office to be a standalone department with duties that will be provided by council members by May 15th.
Thank you, ma'am. That motion has been moved and properly seconded. We've had discussion. Any more discussion? If not, Madam Clerk, could you take the vote, please?
Branham,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. And now to item 5 on our agenda, adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? If not, Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Branham,
Yes.
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
You?
Barron,
Aaron? Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
And we're adjourned.